This is our last class on insurance. It's a short chapter. This, along with tax and finance, are all short chapters. We'll look at those chapters next, and we will spend the remaining part of the year doing management. There's a couple of chapters of management, so that's our last portion of the year. So this, again, last class on insurance, I'm going to be mainly focused on calculations. I looked at this the last day. I'm going to briefly go through it here again. You've a little spiel about a story about Margaret's insurance. Her house is worth 180 grand. Her contents are worth 90,000. How much does Margaret have to pay to insure her house and her contents? So they tell us information here. For every 10,000 euro value for the house, she pays 12. And for every 5,000 euro value for the contents, she pays 20. So how we work out how much she pays is we need to find out, okay, if your house is valued at 10 grand, you pay 12 euro. Her house is valued at 180 grand. So how many 12 euros must she pay? And in order to calculate that, we just take the big number, the 180,000, the value of the house, divided by the per value figure, multiplied by the cost. 180 divided by 10 multiplied by 12 gets me 216 once you work it out. For the contents, we look at the contents and it's the exact same. Contents value is 90,000. 90,000 divided by the per value figure of 5,000 multiplied by the cost of 20. So 90,000 divided by 5,000 multiplied by 20 is 360. So my 216 plus my 360 give me a total of 576. So the full figure, the full value, divided by the per thousand figures, multiplied by the cost. So a total of 576 for the premium. Question I gave you was something to do with Riza's looking for house insurance. How much will it cost? There's sports equipment there as well. So this is how much all the costs are. So the insure for all the figures here are per every 1,000 euros she pays 150, and for the buildings per every 1,000 euros she pays 5. For the contents per every 1,000 euros she pays 20, and this is how much they're all valued at. So the exact same thing again. You take the actual value. So for the house, you take the actual value of the house, you divide it by the per 1,000 figure, and you multiply by the cost. So the actual value for the house is 450,000. For every 1,000 euros she pays 150. So this is my calculations for insure all. The house is worth 450,000. Divided by the 1,000, she pays 150. Multiply that out, you get 675. That's the value. That's every 1,000 euro for the building she pays 150. So 450,000 divided by 1,000 multiplied by €1.50 gives me 675. I'm just doing the same thing for the next couple of ones here. So contents is the same. 110,000 is the value. Per every 1,000 I pay 5. 110,000 divided by the 1,000 multiplied by 5. Sports equipment. Per every 1,000 you pay 20. It's valued at 3,000. So 3,000 divided by 1,000 multiplied by 20. It's always that big number, the value, divided by the per figure multiplied by the cost figure. That's the total for her house insurance, contents insurance, and sports equipment insurance with this company. So if you add up these costs, that's the value to insure each part of her house and equipment. Her total costs for that company are 1,285 euro. The second company is the exact same. It's euro 35 instead of 150. It's €4.50 instead of per 1,000. And then the sports equipment I'll get to in a second. So for the first two, it's still 450,000 divided by 1,000, but this time I multiply by a different cost number. 450 divided by 1,000 multiplied by the other cost number gives me 607.5. And for contents, it is 110,000 divided by 1,000 multiplied by 450. 110,000 divided by 1,000 by 450. So it's 495. For the sports equipment, I'm going through this quickly, but to be honest, they are all just literally copying the very first one I did. Except for this one, because for her sports equipment she pays a flat rate of 120 euro, which is basically she's going to pay 120 euro for her sports equipment up to the value of 5,000. So if her sports equipment is valued at anything from 0 to 5,000 euro, in order to insure it she has to pay this figure and this figure alone, 120. So if her sports equipment is actually valued at 3,000, it's under the 5,000 here, so straight away you just put in the flat rate of 120 euro. That's how much insure all cost. Add it up. 1,285 euro was the total cost of insurance, and for cover for you It's 1,222.5. Obviously, if you're to choose which insurance company you go for, they're both going to offer you compensation, full compensation for insuring with them. So you're obviously going to choose the cheaper one. And Cover For You offers the best value for money. It is €62.50 cheaper than Insure All. All we've done is I take the big value, divided by the per thousand, multiplied by the cost. And I've done that for Insure All and Cover For You for each of those three. The only difference was for the flat rate for the sports equipment here means I didn't have to calculate. Add up everything there and you get your totals. The very last thing I'm going to go through in the end of this chapter is average clause. So what we looked at here, and the different examples we've looked at the idea that Margaret's house is worth 180 grand, her contents is worth 90,000, and she wants to insure everything. But what happens if she doesn't want to insure? What happens if she doesn't want to pay the full amount? If she doesn't want to pay 576, she only wants to insure half of the house. What happens then? So what we look at then, it's called average clause. And the average clause applies in the case of underinsurance or partial loss based on the principle of indemnity. The principle of indemnity there is that you cannot profit off insurance. We looked at this up here. Cannot profit off insurance. You cannot be better off before the loss occurred. I'm not allowed to insure, let's just say, to make it easy, let's just say obviously there's a house that has, whatever, 10 rooms. I can't insure, half the house, and then the whole house burns down, and then the insurance company pays for the full house, because I didn't pay for insuring the whole house. I only signed up for insuring half the house. So if the house is burnt to the ground, only half of the house will be compensated. So how do we go about calculating that? And it's called average clause. So if we're underinsuring, we're not paying for everything. Underinsurance means that the insured item has not been insured for its full replacement value. You've only insured a certain amount of it. So this is an example. This is the one example I'll go through. It's quite simple. This is, to be honest, kind of junior cert work, but it does appear in the Leaving Cert course. A house is flooded and partially damaged. The actual value of the house is $250,000, but is insured for 200,000. The owners are claiming 20,000 compensation for the damage. So there's a house that was worth 250,000, but the owners, for whatever reason, maybe due to a lack of funds, they only insured it for 200 grand. They didn't insure the house for the 250,000. They've only insured €200,000 worth of the house. So they've had damage of €20,000. Let's say their kitchen was completely flooded and destroyed. They haven't insured the full house, so they won't receive the full 20,000. They'll receive a portion of it, depending on how much of the house they've insured. So how much compensation will be paid out to the owners in this case if they have not paid for the full insurance, because they only paid for 200,000 of the €250,000 worth. So how we go about calculating it is as a simple formula. So the compensation, the amount you'll receive, is equal to the insured value divided by the actual value multiplied by the amount claimed. The insured value is how much you paid for, or how much you're insured, how much of the house you actually insured. So how much of the house you intended on insuring is the insured value. It's 200 grand. I insured it for 200 grand. The actual value is the actual value, 250,000. It's how much the house is worth. This is how much of the house you insured. This is how much the full house is worth. This is how much damage you're claiming, 20 grand. And that's all you do. Regardless of what the numbers are, you just plug them all into this exact same formula. Compensation is the amount of the house you've insured divided by the house value multiplied by the amount of damage you claim to have. 200 grand divided by 250 grand multiplied by 20,000 is €16,000. So what exactly happened here? Somebody has a house worth $250,000. They've only insured 200 grand worth of the house. A couple of months pass by, the house gets flooded, kitchen's destroyed, and they're claiming €20,000 worth of damage. The insurance company will say, well, you didn't insure the full house. You've insured, technically you've insured 80% of it here. So because you didn't insure the full €250,000 value of the house, we're not going to give you the full 20,000. they'll do out this formula, they'll put in these figures, and they'll find this, and they'll say, we'll give you €16,000 worth of damage. So since the homeowner has insured the property for only 4/5 of its replacement value, they are entitled to only 4/5 of any loss. And that is insurance. We haven't done many videos on it, many lessons on it. There's not much to it. The insurance is protection against financial loss, and these principles are very, very important. Apart from that, you have to be aware that an actuary is the one that calculates insurance, and this is the kind of information that would go into that, and this is the step-by-step process. And really here the calculations are just very short questions. How would you calculate house premium, and what would happen if they didn't insure the full house? This video might be complicated in some parts. I suppose the benefit of the fact that it is up here on YouTube is that if you weren't sure of any part of this, you didn't know where I got a figure from, or you dozed off halfway through the video, potential could happen, then you can obviously rewind and rewatch. If you have any questions, you can ask. Obviously, I am giving you a couple of questions now based on these calculations, just so you have a little bit of practice going through them. And as I said, they can easily come up as a short question in the leaving cert, and they're handy enough marks whenever they come up. Any questions, just ask. And that's the end of insurance.